Hello and welcome to another behind the scenes video. What I would like to look at is reverb, and it occurred to me, hold on, I just did a quick bit of music for a period drama composition. I didn't do any mixing or mastering on it, so I thought, well, why don't we use that? So that's what we had the other day from How to Compose Period Drama Music. But I thought, hold on, how would I go about actually using reverb on this if I wasn't going to use built-in effects? Because what you can do in different plugins, so in BBCSO for example, I could add reverb here to this violins 1, and then I could go through to violin 2 and so on. But in reality, what you would probably want to do is create yourself a would we do a folder stack? No. Now there's two options here. You could create a summing stack like this, and then on the summing stack you've got control over, you can put effects and sends on the whole thing, which is probably the way to do it. The only trouble is with summing stacks is if you have problems loading instruments or number of instruments, it loads them all as soon as you click on the summing stack. Not necessarily a problem. So probably the easiest way to show adding reverb, because what you want to do is create yourself a send. Let's just pick 20, and this is going to create a new track for us as well. So we now have this aux 2 where the sum is going to. Now to add reverb, you can then put your reverb as an audio effect. So let's use REVERB, which I quite like. Let's go for an orchestral chamber. Now what you'll want to do is make sure that you are using 100% wet signal here, because all we want is the reverb, control over the reverb coming out here. So at the moment there's nothing coming out there. What I'm going to do actually, just trying to think what's the best. Let's turn the mastering off for the time being. So I've got this REVERB, and at the moment you'll see there's nothing coming in there, because what you have to do is choose how much to send. That gets a little bit intense there. Because technically you could now I only did it for the string, so didn't mean to mute it. So that's a great way of adding reverb to a bunch of instruments, and that is probably the best way to do it. The other option would be to go through each of these instruments and add their own sends. Now, the reason we're doing this in a big group and using the summing stack is because we can have the same reverb applied to all the tracks without having multiple plugins. So it's all controlled in the same place. This now effectively becomes your wet dry fader that you would normally, if it was inserted in series on here, you would have to change the wet dry amount, but now it's on its own separate fader, so I would probably rename that string reverbs. So that is the actual reverb coming through there, just on its own. Of course, you can now control all the string reverb straight from here. Things that people sometimes don't realise is there is an output EQ that you can add to. So if you don't want the bottom end, you can change that. Also, the width, the stereo width of a particular signal. That's going to be hard to tell without soloing it, really. That's massively wide. It's down the middle, no width. What you can do is also have, you might want to change this, set this around 200. What this does is says anything below 200 hertz, so about where I've got the puck there, anything below will be in mono, so more down the middle, and the higher frequencies will have that width applied to them. It just stops it becoming too muddy, because if you have a lot of left and right stereo in the bass, it can muddy your tracks because all those low frequencies build up. So here we're EQing it. The other option, of course, is to put an EQ here. So we could put a channel EQ after the reverb. It's another option. So this is going to be for the Logic Pro tips for next week. So we've got EQ. The other thing for reverbs, which is sometimes quite nice, is to play around with multiple effects. So now go in, get your distortion out, and stick some drive on it. That can be quite good for hybrid orchestral stuff. You can hear it really sort of beefs up. with that. So distortion. Another one quite like is stereo delay or tape delay. The character section is quite good for this. Yeah, so we've got the reverb and then it's going into this tape delay. So again, you can low cut. You put them all on. It starts to get really gnarly. Okay, maybe that's not a great example. Maybe we won't show people that one. What could we do? And to be honest, what I'm doing here is probably, if you've not played around with this, have a go. Don't be afraid to. That's quite nice. The left-right delay. It sort of swirls around the room then. Just without any reverb. Remember, you've still got, going back here, the ability to change the amount that goes into. So say nothing. So there's now multiple ways that you can craft your signal. Now what we could do, of course, is create another summing stack for the woods. And we could do that all over again. We get another aux track. We send some signal to it. And let's have a look at Space Designer. So let's go for should we do a plate? So again, I want this 100% wet. What have I done there? Oh, I muted them, didn't I? Don't do that for the quick tip. And with the summing stacks, of course, you've now got control over the volumes to balance them both together. I would probably make that a bit more obvious, to be honest. Maybe stick them in. Don't want it too big. Of course, if you change your mind, you can just send to the strings reverb. If you wanted to match it, you could try that out. Then you know they've got exactly the same effect. Personally, I would probably separate them out like that. The other thing that you might want to do to reverb is actually add a compressor. So something like the Studio VCA or the Studio FET with probably a lower tack. You might need to drop the threshold to get it to come in. That tends to help if it's quite big and whooshy. I don't think those are going to be a good example for that. So let's grab acoustic guitar maybe. That's a good example. Okay, let's create another bus. It's going to be guitar reverb. So we've got signal coming in. Now, a good example where compression would be useful. Maybe you can hear that sort of swelling up. I was thinking of maybe the church. So that's fairly obvious, isn't it? But if that swells up too much, that is where you might want a compressor. What you'll probably want to do is side chain the compression and increase the release. So that whooshiness that builds up from the reverb gets stomped on effectively. So while the guitar is playing, you're squashing the reverb back down, and then when the guitar finishes the note, it gets a chance for the reverb to come back in again. So we can probably see that on the meter. You can see it being affected here. And you probably want a quite fast attack for that to work. And without, so there's another use for compression. We spoke about EQ, playing around with different effects. Go and do that. It's so much fun. I could sit here for hours doing this. Also, make sure you try with different instruments, so orchestral elements, guitars, vocals, obviously, if you've got those included, and get used to, I would say, using sends in groups. So either doing them as a summing stack, or I mean, you could go through individually and set them. Is it worth doing that as well? Because for the way you would do that efficiently, he says, is shift click to select all the strings. So violin 1, 2, cello, bass. Go to your sends, and of course you can set up these reverbs in advance and save it in a template when you've got used to it. So while everything's selected, you know, set them all to the same amount. Which now sounds terrible. There you go. So any ideas you've got for how you use reverb effectively, more than welcome to put them in the comments, because I haven't made next week's video yet. Did you like and subscribe? That's always appreciated. I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.